Well, hello, Patriots, freedom fighters throughout Saskatchewan, across the country, and those few around the world. How are we all doing tonight? So, I'm presently streaming on my main Facebook channel, Canada First, Mark Friesen, Saskatoon, Grasswood, and Forum for Canadian Sovereignty. I'm also on YouTube, Twitter, Rumble, and DLive. I'll upload to Odyssey later. Good evening, survivalist landsmen. Good to see you. Hello, Tina from Ontario. Always keeping tabs on the West. That's good. We're not going anywhere. We're also live streaming on TikTok. Hello, TikTok. Good to see you, folks. Remember, lots of likes, lots of likes. No grumpy faces. It screws with the algorithm, so. And share this out because I'm still horribly shadow banned, as per normal. Anyway, lots going on. Um, where should I start? Well, let's start here. Let's start right there. So, Western Standard, I gotta give huge shout out and huge kudos to Western Standard because they're really about the only independent that isn't afraid to tackle a lot of the issues. In fact, they were the first to cover the raging dissidents issue with Scotiabank, so that was also appreciated. And it looks like it probably forced True North and the Rebel to respond. I see Sheila Gunn Reid responded, and Jeremy did a little thing on that. And True North did a little released the report yesterday at at 2 in the morning. I still saw it, and I said thanks for at least covering this, even though it's 2 o'clock in the morning in the east. Yes, Brenda. I guess that's probably a better place to start before I get into this article. I just I happen Brenda's here. Uh, yeah. So I just happened to I was on Twitter and somebody tagged me on Twitter, letting me know that Rick Walker over at Maverick Media is still doing what he's doing, and I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what his game is. It's just constant fear mongering. There was one guy on there talking about violent revolution. Rick and his people are the only people talking about violence. It's incredible to me. Hi, there's my lovely wife.
Why are you taking the dogs out?
Because they were out, they wanted out.
Who are you talking to?
Well, I'm live streaming.
Oh.
Say hello.
Nah, hello.
Nah, hello. So, um, I don't know what his deal is. I don't know what the deal is with Rick. Um, it's just this constant fear mongering about something that, you know, could end up being really cool and really special. And the coming together of, you know, English speaking Canada and our First Nations in really one of the first events I think that has had that sort of unity message. And again, as I've said before, I think we got to be careful when we're forcing unity with a group of people that cherish individualism and individual freedom. Um, you can get some drama and some friction going on there. But I mean, why not take a shot at it? I don't get it. You know, myself and Ron Valiant have talked about UNDRIP and how dangerous that globalist agenda is, just as part of the greater agenda, and how they're using First Nations to get control of our resources and really get control of our country. And again, the First Nations being used in this way. It needs to be exposed and it needs to be talked about. And people need to come together and exchange ideas. Well, what better way to do that than in the center of Canada? You know, I don't get it. I just don't get it. So you know, my only suggestion, and again, I don't think it requires anybody going in and trying to hack his website and doing all that, trying to get him shut down and all that stuff. But I just think, you know, anybody who's involved and wants to see this be a success, just ignore him. Just boycott him. Don't listen. Just stay out of it. Let him do what he does. He's not taking anybody by storm. I think he's doing more damage to his reputation than any good. So I don't know. You know, it's things like this. I tend to just recommend ignoring more than anything, because he's not serving any good, I don't think. So, yeah. Sorry, I'm laughing at Joyce. She says something about stroke season. Yeah. I quite enjoyed that video. A lot of people enjoyed that. They got a good laugh out of that one. Anyways, so I need to talk about a couple other things. So there's this. And again, thanks to Western Standard and Christopher Oldcorn for, you know, talking about these things and getting the information out there, because you know what we've been exposed to over the last 3 years with our justice system, I'll call it pseudo justice, is really appalling. So I just want to go through this article a little bit, because it's important that these things are raised, that people understand what's happening, and understand why they're happening. So Mark Grizzly Patriot Friesen is not happy about being found guilty of violating public health orders by attending an outdoor protest with more than 10 people. According to the court records, the public gathering occurred at Saskatoon's Vimy Memorial in Kiwanis Park on December 5th, 2020. And so one of the things that in this that we've admitted, I fully admit and I fully concede to anybody paying any attention, yes, I was there. Yes, I went against what the province mandated in not allowing people to gather in groups of more than 10 outside. Yes, I was an organizer. I did that. Yes, there's no argument. So one of the things through this court process is that, you know, because there's a lot of them. I have 11 tickets, and I can't be in court the rest of my days attending all of these court hearings. So I basically just told the lawyers, yes, concede my identity. They're not going to have any trouble identifying me as being there. So let's just carry on. Let's just move along. Because, again, well, let's just read on. Friesen is appealing the decision as the judge did not require the government to present evidence or justify its actions. We are appealing the Court of King's Bench ruling that the government does not have to present evidence to justify their mandates and restrictions as per Section 1 of the Charter. And that's a fact. So, and no government, and I've talked about this before, I'll talk about it again, no government in this country has brought forward evidence that demonstrably justifies their limiting our rights under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. They haven't done that. They haven't lived up to their obligation. And that obligation is discussed and referenced in what they call the Oakes test. Let me just pull that up for a second. So, because it's important, the government is completely ignoring their obligation when they're going to limit our rights and freedoms as written in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And I don't agree with Section 1. I don't believe it should actually exist. I think our rights should be inalienable. There shouldn't be any addendum. There shouldn't be any Section 1 that allows the government to manipulate our rights and freedoms. Our rights and freedoms should be 100% protected and guaranteed without exception. But alas, it does exist in this way since 1982. So the Oakes test was created by the Supreme Court of Canada in 1986, case of R.V. Oakes. The test interprets Section 1 of the Charter of Rights and Freedom, which states that rights are guaranteed, subject only to such reasonable limits as can be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. So, if we do live in a free and democratic society, if a government is going to choose to limit our rights as declared in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, then they must demonstrably justify the mandates and restrictions that are limiting our rights and freedoms. That's their obligation. They're obligated to do this. And no government in Canada has done that. No provincial government that created the mandates and restrictions in each province has ever demonstrably justified doing this. So the Court of King's Bench decided that in an emergency, the government isn't required to prove this, isn't required to bring evidence that justifies the mandates or restrictions. And we think that is unjust because it is in a free and democratic society. This means that the government must establish that the benefit of a law outweigh its negative impact. That is in violation of a charter right. R.V. Oakes, the test. The police caught the accused Oakes in hash, oil, and cash. They charged him with possession of the purpose of trafficking under Narcotics Control Act. He claimed that the drugs were his own and that he did not intend to sell them. At that time, under Section 8 of the NCA, Narcotics Act, anyone found with illegal drugs was presumed guilty of trafficking. Usually the Crown must prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, but under the NCA, it was up to the accused to prove that he was not guilty. This is called reversed onus. And understand when we talk about reverse onus, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms is to hold the government from overreach. So our rights are protected. It doesn't necessarily give us our rights. Our rights are God-given. Our rights are inalienable. The Charter is there to keep the government from overreaching and overstepping what they are. That's what it's for. So this reverse onus is hogwash. Oakes challenged the law, arguing that it violated the presumption of innocence guaranteed by Section 11D of the Charter. The Supreme Court found that this right had been violated. They then had to consider whether the government could justify this violation using Section 1. The government must establish that the law under review has a goal that is both pressing and substantial. The law must be both important and necessary. Governments are usually successful in this first step. The court then conducts a proportionality analysis using three subtexts. The government must first establish that the provision of law which limits the charter right is rationally connected to the law's purpose. If it is arbitrary or serves no logical purpose, then it will not meet this standard. So, for example, if I'm outside gathering amongst people and the government says you can't do that, even though it's guaranteed in our charter that we are allowed to gather, we're allowed to protest, it's a right afforded us, and there should be no limits to numbers, the government has to then justify that restriction or that limit to our right to gather. And they haven't done that because there is no evidence that suggests gathering outside was leading to more transmission of the virus. There's no evidence to suggest that it's transmissible out in the fresh air, outside, where the wind's blowing and it's cold and all these other things. There's no evidence to back that up. There's no evidence to justify limiting our right to gather outdoors. It doesn't exist. And in fact, prosecutors in Saskatchewan have gone to the respondents, the people who were charged in other cases, and told them directly, we've dismissed your tickets because we don't have any evidence that gathering outside with more than 10 people is appropriate. They don't have the evidence. So why is it with my case they're moving forward? And why is it that the King's Bench ruled that the government doesn't have to live up to their obligation under Section 1, under the Oakes test? Secondly, a provision must minimally impair the violated charter right. A provision that limits a charter right will be constitutional only if it impairs the charter right as little as possible or is within a range of reasonably supported alternatives. Well, in this case, there isn't any alternative. We're outside. There's no evidence to back up their mandate restricting or limiting our charter right to gather outside. There's no evidence. They have no evidence. Finally, the court examines the law's proportionate effects. Even if the government can satisfy the above steps, the effect of the provision on charter rights may be too high a price to pay for the advantage the provision would provide in advancing the law's purpose. Well, what's the law's purpose? In the government's arguments, it's to limit the transmission of COVID. But there's no evidence to suggest that this is the case outside in the fresh air. There's zero evidence to back up that position, to back up limiting our charter rights. So that's why we're appealing. And we should appeal because it's insanity that our government in Saskatchewan, supposedly conservative, I beg to differ. There's nothing about them that is conserving anything or defending anything. They're the furthest thing from conservative that I can see. Why are you wasting so many of the public's resources in a time where inflation is through the roof, cost of living is unbearable, people can barely afford to put food on the table, heat their homes, gas in their vehicles. And we're wasting precious resources on frivolous and vindictive court cases that the government just seems to pick and choose. Well, it's Mark Friesen, so we're going to carry on with that one. We're going to make sure that he pays through the nose because we're the government and we're vindictive, even though we know he's right. Of course I'm right. Everybody knows I'm right. Anybody with half a brain knows that I'm right. But they don't care because they're vindictive. They're government. And I chose, and a whole bunch of other people chose, not to abide by their stupidity. And we gathered outside en masse in some pretty good sized numbers. And that pissed the government off. That really fried their ass, which is precisely why they're coming after myself, R.B. Ham, and others, Maxime Bernier, because we gave them the finger and told them to pound sand. So anyway, so that's their obligation. That's the government's obligation. And shoot. I'm just going to pull up that article again. So, we are appealing the Court of Queen's Bench ruling. Hang on. We are appealing the Court of King's Bench ruling that the government does not have to present evidence to justify their mandates and restrictions as per Section 1 of the Charter. And again, no government in Canada under any provincial jurisdiction has justified their mandates with evidence. And they can keep pounding sand too, absolutely, Randy, 100%. Yes, and now the offer made. That's right. They're all concerned about our well-being, which they weren't. It had nothing to do with our well-being and everything to do with controlling us. And now they offer made to anybody who's depressed, who has mental illness, who is suffering if they're elderly, because they're too much of a drain on public resources. So we're just going to offer made. We're just going to kill them. The state is going to kill people. Does that make any sense to you at all? We just spent 3 years of them telling us how much they care, how much we don't care, how much we are selfish because we wanted our rights protected and we wanted the government to actually show us the evidence. We wanted the government to actually have the debate between our doctors and their doctors because we wanted them to justify destroying our livelihoods, locking us down, destroying childhoods, destroying jobs, destroying small business, destroying the fabric of our society. We wanted them to prove it. We wanted them to show us the evidence, and they never did. And they wonder why. Friesen said the government did not provide evidence that justified limiting his rights guaranteed in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. They haven't. And they're obligated to. The onus is on them. It's very clear. And so all of what we're seeing, is lawfare. The Saskatchewan government, the Saskatchewan party, the ruling party in Saskatchewan, is using lawfare against us. I mean, R.B. Ham, They fined him $7,000 for not wearing a mask in a mall. Right? Has nothing to do with anybody's health. Everybody knows those stupid masks don't work. There's no evidence to support that they work. It's putting up a chain link fence to keep out mosquitoes, right? They can't justify it. They haven't justified any of them. They're wrong. But they don't care that they're wrong because it had nothing to do with the science and everything to do with control. And all of this COVID nonsense was a social engineering experiment, a conditioning project to condition the masses to accept the loss of our rights and freedoms that thousands of Canadian soldiers died defending. And these governments came in and trampled on those rights, trampled on the honor and dignity of the people who fought for the rights they were trampling on. Had nothing to do with anybody's health and everything to do with control and socially engineering the masses to prepare them for what is yet to come. That's what it was. Not one government in this country has demonstrably justified limiting our rights and freedoms under the Charter as per Section 1. They haven't. There's no evidence for the government to limit our right to gather outside in groups greater than 30 or 10. The evidence does not exist. And it just doesn't. So why are we spending all... Imagine the amount of resources that this government is taking from the taxpayer to fund all of this nonsense. Judges, lawyers, prosecutors, there's at least 2 or 3. There's always an attorney general representative standing there getting paid, I don't know how much. Defense lawyers, court reporters, all of these things in this kangaroo court that they're holding, where they're completely ignoring the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, completely ignoring it. Because they're the government, they don't have to. The Court of Queen's Bench ruled. Well, they're wrong. They have to. And so why are the people allowing them to do this? Why are the people allowing them to misuse and misappropriate public funds for this nonsense that they can't prove, that they don't have evidence for? Why are we wasting all this resources? Can somebody answer that for me? Because it has nothing to do with anything but control. They need to beat us down, use people like myself, who has a big mouth in this province, as an example. That's it. That's the only reason. And I'm not going away. I'm absolutely not going away. We'll appeal this to the highest level. Because we have to. And huge kudos and huge thanks to the JCCF. Money doesn't grow on trees. And it's crowdfunded, the JCCF. And so that goes to the people. The people are helping with this. I can't, especially this time of year, I can't afford to be traipsing around down to Regina attending these court dates. So the JCCF lawyers are doing it for me. And others. And so huge thanks to the JCCF. Much appreciated. And thanks to Christopher Oldcorn over at Western Standard. Friesen blamed the judge for justifying the government's violating the Charter. Yet there was a judge in Saskatchewan who ruled the government didn't have to justify that under the emergency. And yes, they do. It's abundantly clear. Section 1 is abundantly clear, and not one government has done that. Saskatoon Provincial Court Judge Agnew found Friesen guilty of violating PHOs after viewing a video by a police officer, not to mention all of the cops that they used, that the city used to attend. It was crawling with cops in some of these events, crawling. So how much are they investing in cops with their cameras and hiding in minivans and hiding behind trees? It's like, you know what, dude? I'm right here. Take my picture. I'm smiling at them. I'm right here. I'm not breaking any laws. I'm actually exercising my rights as declared in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, my inalienable rights, to gather in public, outside. And I don't know how many cops at each one of these and how much they spent to forward on their farce. It's so insane. It's all just so crazy. So, anyways, yes, that recording was played for the court. There was clearly substantially more than 30 people in attendance, including the accused. Yes, there was, Judge Agnew. There absolutely was. But the government has no evidence to suggest that this illness was spread outdoors, outside, in public with more than 10 people. They don't have it. It doesn't exist. So you forgot that part. With all due respect, Judge Agnew. Friesen argued that COVID-19 lockdown restrictions violated his rights, but the application was dismissed by Judge Agnew because he was bound by a recent decision of the Court of Queen's Bench, which concluded that the gathering restrictions were constitutional. The Court of King's Bench decision is currently under appeal. Of course it's under appeal, because the government hasn't justified their position in a free and democratic society, as outlined in Section 1 of the Charter. Argues the public health order is invalid and hence unenforceable against him, as it exceeds its authorizing legislation. He additionally argues that the provisions under which he has been charged are too vague, and hence violate Section 7 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Friesen said the police did not provide any warnings before being charged. However, police are not required to give a warning, according to Agnew. Friesen, who also argued that no warning was given by police. I actually didn't argue this. My lawyer did on my behalf. Was given by police. The people at the gathering might be charged. The police are not required to warn people who are breaking the law and that they are doing so, and if they do not stop, they may be subject to some form of sanction. The Justice Center for Constitutional Freedom's lawyer Elaine Anderson represented Friesen. Yes, she did. So there you go. So that's where we're at with that. It is what it is. We're right, they're wrong, and they're the government, and they won't admit it because they're the government, and that's what they do, and it's political. And so, not only am I fighting all of these 11 tickets with the help of the JCACF, and all of them are to do with gathering outside with more than 10 or 30 people. So not only do I go through that, but my government also tried to kill me, and many others in this province, by not offering them any early effective treatment for this illness, like ivermectin or HCQ. That has been proven, by the way. It should have been offered to all of those people that went into the hospital that couldn't breathe and were literally suffocating in their hospital bed thrown onto a ventilator, which in 90%, 91% of cases ended up in death. And none of them, myself included, who came very close to death, was not offered any early effective treatment that we all knew existed and worked. We all knew it because there was doctors that were telling people that they worked and they would be effective. But our government decided not to do that. Not only did they not give me any early effective treatment to deal with this, but my pneumonia, they didn't even treat. For some reason, in Saskatchewan, they don't know how to treat pneumonia. They had no idea. So they just left me in a hospital bed to suffocate to death. I sat there for 3 days listening to a doctor trying to convince me to go onto his ventilator. And I kept saying, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not going on your ventilator. I refuse, because all that means is I'm going to be dead. So no. But then by the 4th day of receiving no treatment, not the treatment that was proven to work, on the 4th day I woke up and I couldn't breathe. I was literally, the doctor came in around 11 o'clock and asked again if I'd go on the ventilator. I told him straight up, I'm either going to die right here and suffocate to death, or I'm going to die on your ventilator. So, off we went into a coma. My heart rate went to 262 beats per minute. It just about exploded. They had to shut it off. They shut it off, and I had a hard time getting it started again. So they just about lost me right off the hop. And then, after 7 days on a ventilator, or whatever it was, 7, 8, 9 days, whatever it was, somebody, the doctor, so what would happen is the nurses would phone my wife, and sort of update her as to how I was doing, what my condition was like, until Sean Taylor arrived. But then she got a call from a doctor, 7, 8, 9 days into this. And the doctor said this, that your husband, somebody above my pay grade, has decided to transfer your husband to Ontario. And then he went on to say that this decision has nothing to do with his health and everything to do with his politics. So he shouldn't be moving across the hall, never mind in a plane at 30,000 feet. And so the decision to stick me on an airplane and transfer me to Ontario, as it turned out, probably saved my life. The fact that I survived that trip, I attribute to all the prayers. And I made it. And immediately, as soon as I got to Mount Sinai Hospital in Toronto, he immediately put me on antibiotics, like the strongest antibiotics they have. It's called meropenem. And to kill the infection in my lungs, because it's bacterial infection that they needed to treat. Somehow the SHA, somebody in Saskatchewan, it didn't dawn on them to treat my pneumonia with antibiotics. Nobody thought of that, I guess. They would have preferred I just lie there and die. So in a weird, twisted way, this attempt to kill me by sticking me in a plane and shipping me to Toronto, and 4 of the 6 that went ended up dying. God rest their souls. I didn't. And that's another big finger to the government from me. No, because they treated me, actually. They treated me with antibiotics. And, you know, obviously I was in rough shape. Sean Taylor didn't think I was going to make it. But I had so many prayer warriors in my corner. There was absolutely no doubt that I was going to make it. But at any rate, all things being said and done, here we are. And I'm still kicking and screaming and still fighting, and my mouth is still flapping. And it'll continue to. Yes, Bunny. Much appreciated. We are all the good doctors in Saskatchewan. It seems like everyone is in a get rich quick scam. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, there's some other darker things going on for sure. I don't know about you folks, but I I'm going to be pretty hard pressed to ever walk into a hospital again. My trust level of the healthcare system is almost beyond repair. They have screwed this up so enormously and so badly. And doctors have bought into the narrative so fully and completely that I I have zero trust left in our healthcare system. It's not a healthcare system. It's a sick care system. It's a death care system. They want you dead. They prefer you dead. That's how these things are right now. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to have to do to repair that. And I'm not alone. I know there's a ton of people out there that have zero faith in our healthcare system. And a lot of people looking for alternative healthcare. And I think that's a good thing. Why would we continue to support a system that is completely dysfunctional and not working in our best interest? It is what it is. I can't even get a doctor. Even if I wanted one, I can't get one. I went to the clinic a while back because my doctor, who's awake, he decided to retire. And so I needed a prescription for some heartburn medication. And I know I should probably be using alternative means to fix my heartburn, but whatever. I went in to see him and I spoke with him. And I asked if he's taking any patients. Can I have you as my doctor? And he said, nope, no doctors are taking any patients at this clinic or basically any other clinic. But they will take Ukrainian immigrants, people that are from Ukraine. He has room for, but people like myself who have paid into this healthcare system for decades, I can't get a doctor. It's reserved only for Ukrainians that are coming from the Ukraine. And they wonder why we have no faith in the system. This healthcare system is for me and you and to all of us who have paid into it for decades. And I can't get a doctor. Whatever. So be it. I don't want one. I'd like to have one. I'd like to have a doctor who's actually not a shill for big pharma. I'd love to have a doctor who's fully awake. That'd be nice. But they're pretty few and far between these days, aren't they? Because it's all about the bucks. It's all about, holding on to your position, holding on to government-funded healthcare, guaranteed paychecks, and corruption, of course, because there's always corruption. So, yeah, there we go. Anyways, enough of that. I got to show you a video. Speaking of the Ukraine war, I want to show you a video that somebody sent me today, and it's extremely important. It really shows you exactly what's going on over there and what they want from this. So give me a sec here. All right.
As an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Electric cars as the savior, as the saving grace.
Date on the replacement for Dr. Fauci that we've been telling you about. Who is this guy? Do we need to worry about him? Is the evil you know better than the evil you don't?
Right. And will he become the replacement? Who knows yet? He's saying no. He's saying, no, I'm not, but it doesn't really matter because his name is being elevated and floated. So we'll dive into that. We're also going to look at the electric car push. You know, it's funny to see, of course, liberals over the past few years have been pushing for electric cars as the savior, as the saving grace for our planet. We've got a really damning new report on what electric cars would actually do to our electric grid, what it would actually do to the United States of America and the rest of the world. So we're going to dive into that.
Plus, we have an interview about the U.S. drug epidemic, pandemic. What epidemic is what I think we should,
epidemic,
yes, the epidemic, the opioid crisis. And a mother's group now is starting to speak for their children, for people who cannot speak for themselves, asking President Biden to please care a little too connected to the news to have a relaxing trip. But you'll be in good hands for the next few days because Clayton will be here holding down the fort.
That's right. So
yes,
I was
it's
pointing.
it's like Road Warrior over here. So just make sure you bring your makeshift armor and just make a weapon as quickly as possible when you land.
By the way, I recommend this channel. It's called Redacted. It's really good.
And I suggest like making something at the airport.
Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome over there. So I was trying to point out here on Rumble, because Rumble has been under a DDoS attack for the past 24 hours. So that's why I was pointing out that YoMojo, at least you guys can comment here in our Rumble chat today. We're on YouTube. But over the past 24 hours, Rumble has said we are under a major cyber attack, a major denial of service attack. And they've stabilized things, but they're still under this attack. So people apparently don't like free speech.
Is that what you think it is? You think it's an intentional attack from people who don't want this platform to be able to speak? Yeah.
Why go after Rumble? Like, why go after a platform that is censorship free and is elevating voices that are really coming after the deep state, elevating voices that are coming after the military industrial complex, elevating voices that are coming after the biopharmaceutical complex?
Yeah.
You know, sharing truth. Like, of course you're going to. That's where the denial of service attacks are coming from. But anyway, yeah, so there you go.
All right. Well, we want to tell you about our newsletter. It is at redacted.in. Yeah.
Sometimes it comes out of a site, and you can see how they document Ukraine's corruption as late as the year 2021. In fact, the United States State Department discourages and even warns U.S. businesses from doing business in Ukraine due to widespread corruption and a government that is anti-democratic. You know, lock up opposition, lock up journalists, make them disappear. This is on the State Department's website. It has been for years, actually. The U.S. State Department in 2021 detailed how the Ukrainian government has a history of making people disappear at the hand of their secret police. So we were shocked. We were shocked to learn overnight that there was gambling going on inside this establishment, that the corruption in Ukraine is even worse than ever. the Ukrainian government confirmed the resignation of multiple high-ranking Ukrainian officials caught in a massive corruption scheme. This is being called the largest mass resignation and corruption scandal since the Russian invasion began. So far, over a dozen high-ranking Ukrainian officials have quit their posts after it was revealed that they were stealing U.S. aid money. So your tax dollars, and not just U.S. money, European money, money from the EU, money from all over the world, is being stolen to enrich themselves. Buying expensive cars, embezzling money, bribery, buying houses. The list of offenses is quite long, actually, when you go through it. All of this is happening, of course, while common people suffering under wartime conditions who are paying exorbitant energy costs. Indicators today that gas prices are going to be surging again in the next
all orchestrated, all coordinated, all by design.
Coming weeks. There are a couple of big indicators on that. Diesel prices, etc. Natural gas, of course, is up. Electricity costs are through the roof. Food shortages. So you're suffering, but they're lining their pockets off of your money. Here's just a small sample of the people that were caught stealing. I'm not going to really attempt to speak all of their names, but here's just a laundry list. Deputy prosecutor. Here's the deputy prosecutor. The Deputy Minister for Development of Communities and Territories. The Deputy Minister for Development of Communities and Territories, another one, Nagoda. They were all in this. Deputy Minister of Social Policy. The regional governors of multiple regions, Zaporizhia, Kiev, Sumy, Kherson, Dnipropetrovsk. Am I saying that right? I don't know. And then, of course, last week we saw the Ukrainian air defenses blew up the helicopter that was carrying the interior minister alongside his deputy minister and their state secretary. Here was this incident, of course. Here's what's left of that helicopter. So corruption, major members of the government stealing, caught up in this corruption scandal, and then shot out of the sky.
I mean, this is not new. Yanukovych had a palace before he fled the country, the former president, outside of Kiev. It's like it still stands as sort of a lavish shrine to excess. They don't make very much, but it's called Mezzoria. It has a cocktail bar, a 3-lane bowling alley, a gym, a boxing ring, indoor tennis courts, a swimming pool with an artificial waterfall, a basement rifle range, a conservatory containing palms and a stuffed lion, a relaxation room with stalactites made of salt crystal, a Neogothic cinema. I can go on. Like 5 pianos. This is common. This is known.
So yeah, for years, and of course we covered all of those guys leaving, right? All of those guys from the government, a lot of the people from the high up leaving and going to Monaco and setting up base there.
But we should not fool ourselves that this kind of government corruption is over now in less than a decade. It's just not there any longer.
And again, to my point, if you went on the U.S. State Department's website in 2021, it had a laundry list of egregious offenses and why the United States, if you're in business, you should avoid doing business in Ukraine because of all of these levels of corruption. So this is not new, but I guess suddenly when February of 2022 rolls around, then suddenly we forget that stuff, right? We just ignore the corruption. Well, one of the names on this list is a scumbag by the name of Vyacheslav Shapovalov. Sounds like I'm saying it right. Am I saying that right? Shapovalov, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah. It just does not flow off the tongue. Shapovalov. Now it does. Now it's in there like the marble ringing around and hitting up against the thing in there, like a ping pong table.
It's become a core memory.
Now it's a core memory. So Shapovalov, Lapa Ding Dong, this guy was in charge of the Army's logistical support, this guy. Getting food and supplies to the guys that need it most. Instead of that, though, he was lining his pockets by charging the United States inflated prices for food rations and then pocketing the rest, the difference. So, this MRE, this meal ready to eat, actually costs $2, but he's charging $6 and then pocketing the difference. all of this reminds me of how Democrats refused to appoint a Ukrainian auditor when Senator Rand Paul withheld his vote on the spending in Ukraine. And he was saying, look, we need to have an auditor. He wanted to make sure that billions being sent to Ukraine wasn't being stolen or mishandled like it was in Afghanistan. Of course, he withheld his vote. Democrats voted against the auditor. Watch.
If this gift to Ukraine passes, our total aid to Ukraine will almost equal the entire military budget of Russia. And it's not as if we have that money lying around. We will have to borrow that money from China to send it to Ukraine. The cost of this package we are voting on today is more than the U.S. spent during the first year of the U.S. conflict in Afghanistan. Congress authorized force, and the president sent troops into the conflict. The same cannot be said of Ukraine. This proposal towers over domestic priorities as well.
Yeah, it does. So instead of infrastructure in the United States or schools, roads, bridges, rail system, where's the Build Back Better plan? It's in Ukraine. So can you imagine voting against an audit so that this doesn't happen? That was exactly what Rand Paul was warning us about, right? We would know, hey, okay, wait a minute, you're overcharging us for meals ready to eat and food rations?
Right, 3 times the price,
right.
Then maybe, just maybe, we don't need to send 3 times as much.
Right, so
we
these
can
guys
reduce
are
our
corrupt.
budget.
We would have been able to figure this out. Hey, these guys are corrupt, so we'd figure this out. So this list includes the most powerful people in the government. This would be like if every member of President Biden's cabinet just resigned amid corruption charges. Think about this for a second. Wrap your heads around this. Transportation Secretary Buttigieg, gone because of corruption, right? Energy Secretary Granholm, gone because of corruption. Top prosecutor Merrick Garland at the Department of Justice, gone. It's the same damn thing. So it begs the question then, how high does this corruption go?
And how much will it touch Zelensky?
Right.
I mean, you know, the global press has done a really good job pretending that it doesn't touch him at all. And just like he was surrounded by these people, that's a shame.
They ignore all of the houses that he owns.
Yes.
When it was seen that his wife was spending $40,000 in Paris, right after asking the West for more money, that was swept under the table, right? You're not supposed to know about that. All of these people quit surrounding Zelensky. How high does this go? These are his people. So the walls are closing in on him. Now, as you know, Colonel Douglas Macgregor on our show a number of months ago said the real question is, when does this get to Zelensky, right? When does it get to a point where it closes in around him? And are we seeing that right now? It appears so. These things don't just happen, right? A helicopter shot down. All of these members of your inner circle are now resigning over corruption. How does this happen? Who's putting the screws to him? Meanwhile, American businesses are forbidden from doing business in Russia because of sanctions. They're being encouraged to do business in Ukraine, though. What the hell? Really? Didn't you hear my State Department example just a minute ago? Like, the State Department's telling American businesses you probably should avoid Ukraine because it's full of corruption, so probably not a great place to do business. But now we're actively encouraging business in Ukraine and telling you not to do business in Russia. See the hypocrisy and double standards here. The most corrupt government in Europe you're being encouraged to do business with. Because this is all theater, of course, right? Yesterday, during a business breakfast that was organized by the U.S. government and Ukrainian leaders and American businesses, you had the CEOs of BlackRock, Goldman Sachs, Westinghouse, all announcing major plans to partner with Ukraine and reconstruct Ukraine. Perfect opportunity, right? Again, the U.S. State Department was up until last year warning Americans and American businesses to avoid doing business with the corrupt Ukraine. So what changed? Well, so yesterday we got some major announcements. BlackRock plans to turn Ukraine into, quote, a beacon of capitalism, they say. Well, maybe you could start with the government itself, which is actively, dictatorial at this point, going after and closing down churches, going after and disappearing opposition leaders and journalists. Capitalistic? You're going to make this a beacon of capitalism? And Goldman Sachs says that Ukraine's reconstruction will offer, quote, good economic incentives for real return and investment. Here's how the Washington Post framed it this morning. At the same breakfast session, Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, spoke of his plans to help coordinate billions of dollars worth of reconstruction financing for Ukraine, saying he hoped the initiative would also turn the country into a beacon of capitalism. David Solomon, CEO of Goldman Sachs, spoke cheerily of Ukraine's post-war future. There's no question that as you rebuild, there will be good economic incentives for real.
Are we really sure that Ukraine is the most corrupt country? Or is America one of the most corrupt countries funding all of this nonsense with the likes of BlackRock and Goldman Sachs and big money? Where's the real corruption? I think we know the answer.
Return and real investment, he said. And not to be outdone, of course, Volodymyr Zelensky, with the coordination of the U.S. government, joined the meeting to thank these businesses for their money. And he explained how all of these weapons contractors, this is an unbelievable piece of video. Wake up, grandma, get your kids, watch this piece of video. They have to pinch yourself to see what he says. He explained how all of these weapons contractors are able to use Ukraine to make massive profits. Come to Ukraine, you will benefit. Weapons contractors, everything. Ukraine will be your breadbasket. Watch.
God.
It is obvious that American business can become the locomotive that will once again push forward global economic growth. We have already managed to attract attention and have cooperation with such giants of the international financial and investment world as BlackRock, JP Morgan, and Goldman Sachs. Such American brands as Starlink or Westinghouse have already become part of our Ukrainian way. Your brilliant defense systems, such as HIMARS or Bradleys, are already uniting our history of freedom with your enterprises. We are waiting for Patriots. We are looking closely at Abrams. Thousands of such examples are possible, and everyone can become a big business by working with Ukraine in all sectors, from weapons and defense to construction, from communication to agriculture, from transport to IT, from banks to medicine. And I believe that freedom must always win.
It's like a creepier version of like an Epcot ride. Like,
Yeah.
the future of tomorrow. Here in Ukraine, you come and you get to see the future. It's
Great
like
American way.
Yeah, right.
We have capitalism and we want consumerism. As long as we
maybe I don't-
do the death first.
Maybe I don't understand capitalism, but like this sounds to me like if I own like a sandwich shop, and then I give Clayton like $100,000 to come and buy all of my sandwiches, and I'm like, look how much money you made.
right.
It's like,
Yeah, exactly. So all of this phony money floating in there, it's like this is so when you come to do business there, what we're doing is basically laundering money. That's basically what we're doing. So if you come and do business here, you're getting laundered money.
But that's the globalist way. That's how that's all done. This is the root of all of it. It's siphoning, money laundering, and promising record profits for all of these that play nice, these multinationals, these oligarchs, these monopolies. It's all about the promise of riches, while the rest of us starve, while the rest of us are turned into serfs, while the middle class is destroyed. That's what all of this is. This whole Ukraine war was contrived, orchestrated, coordinated for exactly what we're seeing. The consequences of this. All of this is all by design.
That's how this works. I like your American weapons.
Which
We've
will
already been
then
eating-
line the pockets of the worst people imaginable.
Yeah.
Are we to believe that he is then going to replace these with adults, upstanding adults in the room who are actually going to manage any aid that comes in? No, it's what actually a YouTube commenter on one of our videos recently said. It's a kakistocracy. Have you heard this? Kakistocracy is a government run by the worst people.
Like
kakistocracy.
Kakistocracy.
And yeah, that's what we're supporting at this point.
Your American weapons, and I enjoy your American M&Ms. We have bowls of American M&Ms all around office here in Kyiv. So bring your candies. I love your American M&Ms. Kit Kat, bring those as well. So we are a breadbasket for capitalism. Now, according to the AP, so this is amazing because, yesterday we saw the United States has announced that it's going to send 31 Abrams tanks to Ukraine. And of course, these will be destroyed very quickly. And of course, just a short time ago, we did get confirmation of about 100 different Leopard tanks coming from Poland, through Poland. Now, these are older Leopard tanks. These aren't the new ones that Germany's about to send, which we'll get to in the next segment. So we learned yesterday that the war in Ukraine is finally starting to pay off big time for some of these American weapons companies like Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. They posted stunning quarterly earnings yesterday. So here's how the Daily Caller puts it. The war in Ukraine is finally starting to pay off for big defense contractors.
Oh, good. I mean, fortune favors the bold,
We were worried about these guys, right? Lockheed reported quarterly sales of $19 billion. 3% above internal forecasts, netting 1.9 billion in profit compared to 2.05 billion the prior year. Raytheon earned 1.4 billion in the fourth quarter of 2022 compared to 685 million in the same period in 2021. With sales skyrocketing nearly 6% to 18 billion, results that beat Wall Street expectations. By the way, who's the Wall Street analyst that got that wrong? We're like in multiple wars around the world. We're in Yemen, we're in Somalia, we're in Syria. We're leveling Ukraine, destroying Ukraine, sending weapon after weapon after weapon. How does a Wall Street analyst get that wrong?
I think they're doing that on purpose.
Downplaying it?
Yeah, to make it not seem like it's profitable.
I wish we could just bypass the middleman and just take our tax dollars and give it directly to the defense contractors and avoid the killing people in the middle part. Because that's ultimately what we're doing. We're sending them money to buy weapons from us.
Right.
Can
we just have a stipend?
That's the part that doesn't make sense.
We'll just pay you. We'll pay you, but not to kill people. You can have our money, but we really don't want you killing any more people. That's really at the end of the day what we want. That's what this show is all about. We're vehemently anti-war on this show. Now, Lockheed and Raytheon make up the lion's share of contracts associated with the $27 billion in U.S. security assistance that's been committed there, starting 11 months ago. So the remaining, we just got Boeing earnings today, which actually were not that good, but unrelated really to Ukraine. General Dynamics, Northrop Grumman, we'll see that on tomorrow's results tomorrow from Northrop Grumman. So I'm sure these weapons contractors, anything they're able to funnel into Ukraine. And we also heard on the earnings call from Lockheed Martin and Raytheon, they're like, we're doing great. We're really amping things up. So
we're having a fun time.
Yeah, everything's great. We're doing really, really great in Ukraine. So we've got more news to get to here. We're going to talk about Germany declaring war on Russia next, and we're going to look at the latest on the Leopard tanks and what that means for the future of this conflict. We're also going to sit down for part 2 of our investigative series on Dr. Peter Hotez. Of course, it could be the replacement for Dr. Fauci. And wait until you hear, because this is where a number of people are predicting the U.S. dollar, gold, or silver. Dollar, and can learn more at 1-800-613. We crushed your army. Tens of millions of people died as a result of what Germany did.
Who's we in this instance?
I'm just saying the collective West, but of course, the collective we being Russia in this scenario. I'm not saying we are Russians.
Russia is part of the West.
Just using it as a rhetorical sort of a narrative device.
Okay. I'm trying to follow you.
Yeah. So Russia loses. Russia's tens of millions of people, of course, died.
45 million.
45 million.
Yeah.
So 45, just a paltry, 45 million people die from what Germany decided to do. Now, the second time you repeat the same mistake, and what will happen to your country now? Will it become a farce? So what will happen when Russia decides to retaliate against a growing German threat? We're about to find out, because Germany just today openly declared war on Russia. This isn't a backroom conversation, some low-level peon, some low-level person. No. This is the German foreign minister. Oddly, speaking in English, this is Annalena Baerbock, oddly speaking in English for all the world to hear, even though she was at the Euro Council meeting, which there's no English-speaking country represented at the Euro. So she's speaking in English so we can all hear how she feels about this war, openly declaring that Germany is now at war with Russia. Listen.
And therefore, I've said already in the last days, yes, we have to do more to defend Ukraine. Yes, we have to do more also on tanks. But the most important and the crucial part is that we do it together and that we do not do the blame game in Europe, because we are fighting a war against Russia and not against each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Minister.
She's not speaking, though, only for Germany. She's speaking for all European countries.
Yeah.
Saying all European countries are at war with Russia.
We are in a world war with Russia. We are at war with Russia. Not Ukraine is at war with Russia. We are at war with Russia. Those were her words. And this, of course, many Germans were quick to freak out about this, rightly so. Of course, we've seen a lot of protests across Germany saying down with this, absolutely not. And now they're calling for her immediate resignation. Will it happen? Of course not, because she's a stooge of the deep state. She's perfect for them. Russia responded, saying, hey, the ball's in your court now. Want to keep escalating things because this is going to go nuclear. This, of course, is the same nut job who told Germans that she will put Ukraine first no matter what German voters think or how hard their lives get. Watch.
But if I give the promise to people in Ukraine, we stand with you as long as you need us, then I want to deliver, no matter what my German voters think, but I want to deliver to the people of Ukraine. And this is why, for me, it's important to be always very frank and clear. And this means every measure I'm taking, I have to be clear that this holds on as long as Ukraine needs me. We are facing now winter time where we will be challenged as democratic politicians. People will go on the street and say, we cannot pay our energy prices. And I will say, yes, I know, so we help you with social measures. But I don't want to say, okay, then we stop the sanctions against Russia. We will stand with Ukraine, and this means the sanction will stay also in wintertime, even if it gets really tough for politicians.
Yeah, so we don't care. We don't care about you, citizens. It doesn't really matter. What we care about, of course, is Ukraine.
And she's making a unilateral statement. She's saying, I gave my word. This is what I want. Other people may not want it, but I like the idea of this and I'm sticking with it. It's very self-centered.
Yeah. So screw you. It doesn't matter what, you can't pay your energy bills. We're sticking with Ukraine. My voters, I don't care. So Russia fired back. Of course, Putin's ally, Russian President Medvedev, invites Biden and Schultz to stop the doomsday clock ticking. Germans are outraged by this overall, of course. And here's a German response to this. So here's a German who says she has to immediately step down. It's one thing to support an allied country, which I guess is already a stretch of the term, but how could one be that irresponsible when choosing one's words? The most important thing to do is avoid a direct conflict, not to embrace it. German politician Marianne Harder-Kunel says this, posted this, and the translation is, what Baerbock expresses here is a de facto war to Russia. In this war, she wants to pull all Europe in. She carelessly risks human lives. Whom does this woman serve? Not German or European interests, but U.S. geopolitics.
Bingo.
And of course, yes, bingo. That's the heart of it. That's the heart of it. What she's talking about, of course, is the new Leopard tanks being sent to Ukraine. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said that Germans would not send Leopard tanks to Ukraine because the people don't want us to do it, he said. But apparently the German people don't matter much to these politicians because Olaf Scholz has done an about face and is now sending Leopard tanks. as he makes this announcement. He asks the German people to trust him. This is like an unbelievable statement he makes. He asks the German people to trust him and his federal government after, wait a minute, you told us you didn't want us to elevate a war in Ukraine and send Leopard tanks. We ignored you. Now I want you to trust me. Listen.
Es gibt in diesem Land viele Bürgerinnen und Bürger, die sich Sorgen machen. Auch angesichts einer solchen Entscheidung und angesichts der Dimensionen, die diese Waffe mit sich bringt. Und deshalb möchte ich diesen Bürgerinnen und Bürgern hier und an dieser Stelle sagen, vertrauen Sie mir, vertrauen Sie der Bundesregierung. Wir werden weiter, weil wir international abgestimmt handeln, sicherstellen, dass diese Unterstützung möglich ist, ohne dass die Risiken für unser Land darüber in eine falsche Richtung wachsen. Das ist, warum wir das so tun, und so werden wir es auch weitermachen.
So think about how dumb that is, okay? You told us that you did not want us to send tanks into Ukraine because you don't want this to descend into World War III, and then of course Germany gets attacked and we're destroyed, right? You, the German citizen, said you didn't want this overwhelmingly.
Yes.
We ignored you. We're doing it anyway. Now I'm asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to put your faith in the federal government that this won't descend even further. Because he says we put controls into place to make sure that our country doesn't go in the wrong direction. Have you been to Germany lately? Have you seen what direction Germany is going? Where people can't pay their heating bills? You've turned off nuclear power in favor of coal power plants?
Protests in even small towns.
Germans are going to the forests and cutting down trees to heat their homes. Sounds very green to me. It's just all such a farce.
Anti-war protests saying, we do not want this. We absolutely don't support it.
Your Nord Stream pipeline is blown up by your allies, and you know this, and you have the answers to this, but you won't release it. You won't release the information on this, and now you're paying exorbitant costs for natural gas. Wait a minute, you let the United States and its allies blow up the Nord Stream pipeline where you could get cheap natural gas from Russia. Now you're paying 4 times as much, or even in some cases 7 times as much for the same product shipped from the United States now.
And reverting to coal.
Yeah, but don't worry, our country's going in the right direction. Like, this is madness.
Right. And this just trust me a little bit more when there's no real answer.
All right. That's enough of that. It's just, unfortunately, mainstream media rules the day. And everybody watches the mainstream news, and they think they're informed because mainstream media told me so. And most of the population doesn't see what we just saw. Nobody thinks outside what's created by our politicians with the help of the media. And so everybody listens to what's popular, and they think they're informed, and they have absolutely no idea. The simple fact that this Ukraine quote-unquote war was 100% avoidable and should have been avoided is evidence enough that all of this is orchestrated and contrived. And it's all to do with globalism. It's all to do with... Ukraine's a pretty strategic place geographically and geopolitically. It's pretty strategic. It's got a lot of food. It's got a lot of resources, and they want control of it. And that's exactly what happened. They used the Maidan protests in 2013 and 14 to depose a democratically elected president. And then we saw the protests. The protests were done by what was framed as Ukrainian nationalists. Meanwhile, in the crowd, throughout the crowd of protesters, there's EU flags flying around. Which is the opposite of nationalism, which is the opposite of securing democracy in the Ukraine. It's actually the envelopment of the Ukraine within the European Union. That's what this is all about, is they need to control the resources. It's the same thing on the bigger scale. The whole sustainable development agenda is about control. It's about global governance. It's about depopulation. It's about hoarding the world's resources, controlling the world's resources, which is why they're destroying, Trudeau is destroying our economy with the help of the Conservatives. They voted in favor of all the money that the Conservatives now question that went out flying out the door. We've never been in so much debt. We've never had such deficits, all approved by the establishment for one purpose: to destroy Canada, to destroy nation states throughout the Western world, throughout Western civilization, so they can come in, redistribute our wealth that we created, redistribute it, knock us down from first world to second and third world, so we become poverty-stricken, hungry, and dependent on global governance. That's what this is all about. The Ukraine war is doing exactly what it's supposed to do throughout Europe. People are starving. People can't heat their homes. Cost of living's going through the roof. The same story here in Canada, the United States. It's all by design to destroy Western civilization, destroy the first world, knock it down, redistribute the wealth, knock it down to second and third world status, so everybody is equal. Destroy the middle class, destroy small business, and there you have it. You have the elites, and you have the slaves, and you have the serfs. And that's exactly what they want, all by design. While they reduce the Earth's population through many different means. And that's globalism. War is just an element of that globalist agenda. They created it, completely avoidable. So the answer to all of it is local. All of this hyper-centralization, globalism, all of this, the antidote is community, is local, is self-reliance, self-determination, independence, and community. And pulling ourselves out of the matrix. Like I said the other day on Twitter, if you can manage it, pull out of, if you're attached to one of the major banks, pull out. And I'm not suggesting necessarily that credit unions are going to be much better, because it looks like they're probably going to play along. But if we do a run on the big banks, maybe that sends a message. But we have to do something. We got to pull out. We literally have to unscrew ourselves from the matrix, and that includes supporting any of the establishment parties, because we know who they are. We know what they are. There's enough proof to understand who the cons are, who the libs are. All of the establishment parties that are sitting in Parliament right now are good for nothing. They're not working on your behalf. So I did a little thought experiment on Twitter today, and I'll do it now too a little bit. So just imagine for a second. You're Brian Mulroney. You're the Prime Minister of Canada. You're conservative. In 1992, you fly to Rio de Janeiro because, 179 countries are taking part, so you better. Not because you owe it to your population in Canada to do the right thing. No, you fly to Rio and you sign and commit our country to Agenda 21, otherwise known as the Rio Declaration. That's the first incarnation of these agendas, Agenda 21, an agenda for the 21st century. And after you sign that, when you fly back to Canada, you don't send your MPs back to their constituents to inform them of the agenda you just committed them to. In fact, instead of informing the population in this country of what you committed to, what the consequences are, and how it's going to affect each and every family across this country, you do the opposite. You actually conceal it. You actually hide it from the people. You actually label it as conspiracy theory. So nobody pays any attention to it. And when anybody, such as myself and others, start talking about Agenda 21, we're labeled, ridiculed, shamed as conspiracy theorists. And the media played right along with it. They didn't do their job either. They didn't tell you what it meant. They didn't tell you what the implications are. They didn't tell you what the consequences of this is. And so while that's happening, and while it's in its own development at a national level, being implemented throughout the bureaucracy, the public service wasn't told either. And they kept that from the public service. They compartmentalized this. They instituted it and implemented it throughout the bureaucracy with the help of the Liberals. And then Harper came to town and got himself elected by selling out the Reform Party, by merging with the Red Tories, simply to get power. And then what did he do? Well, he created the first law in Canada called the Sustainability Act, which then makes it binding. So you always hear these people saying, well, it's not binding. Well, yeah, it is binding because Harper made it binding. Harper made it law in this country that in 2008, every government moving forward had to report the progress of achieving the goals of sustainable development to the UN, an unelected, unaccountable foreign entity that doesn't have any of our best interests in mind or at heart. And it's law. And now we have to do this. Which is why you hate Trudeau as much as you do. Because Stephen Harper, a month before the election of Justin Trudeau, signed us on in September 27th of 2015 to the latest incarnation of this agenda, Agenda 2030. And it was then the act was updated in 2015. It's actually gone through a number of different updates through Parliament, of which Pierre Poilievre has voted on no less than 6 times. And so Trudeau was elected. Within the first 4 days, he did an interview with the New York Times, referring to us, our nation, our country, as the first post-national state and a country with no core identity. He wasn't talking to us. He wasn't talking to you. He was talking to his handlers at the UN and the World Economic Forum, telling them that he's fully committed to what Harper just committed us to and signed us up to. And everything that Trudeau's put in place and implemented in the form of OICs, in the form of bureaucratic policy, in the form of bills, has all been in compliance with that agenda. All of it. All of it. Everything he's done is in compliance with that agenda. All of it. Which is why we all hate him so much. Which is why our economy is swirling the bowl. Which is why our prosperity is gone. Which is why our freedoms, our rights, our sovereignty, our prosperity and truth is gone. Because they need to destroy all of those Western values in order to achieve the goals of sustainable development. If you look at the goals, and we actually did a project, I mentioned this last time, but we did a project, there's myself and 3 others, where we discuss each and every one of the goals from 1 through 17. Each one is about 45 minutes. The first release should be probably tomorrow or the next day. And then we're going to have a Twitter space to discuss the first and second goal. So I'm looking forward to it. And the production that we've put together, as I said, is a discussion of each one of these goals. So people clearly understand how detrimental this is to our way of life, to our country, to our freedoms, our liberty, our sovereignty, prosperity and truth, and how this is going to destroy all that. And so that's why I hold the Conservative Party in so much contempt. That's why I would never support them as long as I live for what they've done. Because picture this. None of them, conservatives, liberals, any of them, they all knew from 1992 what this agenda represented to our industries, to our prosperity, to our way of life, to our freedoms, our liberty, our sovereignty. They all knew it. Every single one of them, federally, provincially, municipally. They've all been a party to this. They're all complicit. None of them came to you to tell you what this is and what the consequences of this agenda is. None of them. Not one ever. And I'm supposed to accept that as within the destruction of my nation because of this agenda they've committed to? I'm supposed to accept that because Pierre's going to save the day? Are you serious? Anybody supporting any of the establishment parties is woefully ignorant. And I'm just telling the truth. I'm just calling it the way it is. If you still support any of those establishment parties, you're woefully ignorant. And I'll challenge you to debate any day of the week, all day long. Anybody that's still supporting any of the establishment parties, come on my channel. Let's have a chat. I'll destroy you. Because they're responsible for it. There's no 2 ways about it. And then Pierre runs around telling everybody he doesn't know anything about it. He's never heard of it. Bullshit. He's voted for it 6 times. No less than 6 times he's voted on in favor of it. He knows exactly what it is. His party's responsible for committing us to it. While the Liberals, when they're in power, they just implement it. And it's just about time to flip the script. Trudeau's just about running out of steam. He's about to resign. I think it won't be too far down in the near future. He's going to resign. And in come the Conservatives. Just as globalist as the Liberals. Except they come at it by lying to you. They come at it by using language to achieve these goals. And they hide it from you. Because if anybody ever came to you in a town hall meeting and explained to you what this agenda represents and what its consequences are and how detrimental it is to everything we cherish, you would have rejected it out of hand. And you probably would have told that politician who tried to sell it to you to resign immediately. because it's that bad. It will destroy everything we cherish. It already is. We're already under global governance. It's already happening. This agenda has been around since 92. That's why we're in such a terrible spot right now. It's all relative to that agenda, all of it, everything. And Pierre Poilievre can run around denouncing the World Economic Forum till he's blue in the face. Doesn't add up to a hill of beans. It means absolutely nothing. World Economic Forum is a support mechanism for this agenda. That's all it is. That's all it is. It's cover for what they did to us, the Conservative Party. And until people get it, until people understand, nothing's going to get any better. We're finished. Until enough people wake up, until enough people understand that everything is related to that agenda. All of it. That's how encompassing this thing is. And they've been at it since 1968. Since the Club of Rome first conceptualized this agenda through the work of Dennis Meadows in his book Limits to Growth. So until we get it, until we get the critical mass that understand what this is, they move forward with it, and we keep giving them a pass. And people keep making excuses because they look at politics like they look at a football game. They are on blue team, so they're going to support blue. Regardless of the evidence you show them, regardless of what you tell them, what truth you tell them. They're cheering for blue team because blue team has to beat Trudeau. We have to get rid of Trudeau. He's going to step down before any of that happens. And the Liberals will elect, I'm guessing, you can hold me to it or not, but I'm guessing it'll be Mark Carney that gets the nod to lead the Liberals. That'll happen in the relatively near future. And yes, in the interim, that means Chrystia Freeland will be acting as interim Prime Minister until they have a leadership convention and they appoint their new guy, which I think will be Mark Carney. And then it'll be Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney, the two globalists fighting it out to see who gets to ruin the country. That's it. That's what it is. Michelle says, so the leaders we get depend on what the main driving force sees as what the majority will buy. Trudeau, as you say, Mark, has run out of steam, and now they need a leader that looks different to the masses, but he isn't, but enough think that he is, and that's all they need. Yeah, 100%. 100% that's what it is. Trudeau's unelectable. He's finished. I'm convinced of it. He'll step down, just like we saw Jacinda there in New Zealand. Trudeau's days are numbered. That Liberal Party won't tolerate him being around for much longer. They'll force him to step down. He will. And they'll have a leadership convention and they'll appoint who they want, just like the Conservatives do. And we'll see where it goes. But that's how I see this happening. They're not going to run Trudeau in another election. And this whole idea that there's going to be a spring election, hogwash. Trudeau can't win. So the Liberals aren't going to make that happen. All that was a conservative agenda to raise money. And it worked. And everyone got their knickers in a twist and donated their hard-earned money to the Conservative Party because that's what it was. It was a funding mechanism. Yeah, so. Yeah, that could be, Tina. That could be. Yep. Boris, Jacinda, Trudy, Biden, all chosen because they're goofs. Well, they're chosen because they're yes people. They're chosen because they committed to the agenda. They committed to achieving the goals of sustainable development. They committed to globalism. So all of them, they're all like that through Western civilization. They're all no different from each other. What happened with the Yorkton delegate and was moved from power? Well, she's still serving. What's her name? Kathy Wagenthal. Yeah, she's still an MP. She's still an MP. Yeah, Roger says it's easier to rule a band of idiots. Yeah, but this is the thing, right? So they control the media, and this is what it's so frustrating. Like, it's so obvious that all of these media companies only exist because the government gives them money to exist. So, of course, they're only going to regurgitate what the government wants them to regurgitate. And nobody picks up on this. It's a conspiracy theory. The government is literally paying these media companies to say exactly what they want. and we wonder why the masses are so dumbed down and so stupid. Because they can't figure it out. They just can't. They're addicted. They're junkies. Yeah, the puppet did his job. Up here is articulate and much more dangerous. Yeah, well, that's just it, right? I mean, it's the perfect storm. It's the perfect scenario for the globalists to get in who they want, with the conservative supporters behind it 100%. They won't budge. They won't think. They just, like drones, they just do. And it's the perfect storm. They get in who committed us to this agenda twice. Made it law in this country, which makes it binding. But when you tell these people, all they say is, "Oh, you're splitting the vote." It's like, dude, don't you get it? Don't you get it? You don't understand? And they don't, because they don't want to. Because they're so hyper-focused on getting rid of Trudeau. That's it. That's all that matters. That's all that matters. It's that surface level. It really is. And that's exactly where they like him, which is why they only ever talk about things that are at the surface, that the media puts out for you to talk about. That's why it's done. It's propaganda. They're telling you what the news is. They're not reporting the news. They're telling you what it is. And they're telling you how to think about it. Because that's the system. That's what they want. That's how they control you. And it's working, obviously. What do you mean, Bunny? Politicians and bureaucrats are committing what is known in Canadian law as a terrorist hoax. It is a complete destruction of Canada. It's all crazy fools who need to be arrested immediately. Yes, 100%. Well, that's a problem too, William, is these black pills that run around saying, "Oh, I'm not voting for anybody. What's the point? What's the use?" Right? Nothing ever changes. Well, I can guarantee you nothing will ever change if you don't vote, if you don't get involved, if you don't hold these people accountable. guaranteed it'll never change. And if you're waiting for a revolution, you'll be waiting a long time. You'll be waiting a very long time. Yes, all MSM all read the same script. Of course they do. That's how they do it. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Which is why I frequently repeat my message. Repeat, repeat, repeat. I have to, because that's what they do. So I'm just going to keep doing it. And ad nauseum until people get it. I have to. Shell says, right now, here in Alberta, we are being sold on the idea that Danielle Smith is here to save us. She just needs a chance that if we trust them, Take Back Alberta, they will make sure that all the best candidates get elected, and then they will save the day. If you question the hands and money behind the movement, you are told to be quiet and stop fighting Smith instead of fighting Notley. You are told you are being divisive and not promoting unity. Yeah, 100%. It's the same game played federally. It's the same game played in every province. That stick with us. Stick with the establishment. They're going to save us. No, they're not. No, they're not. Danielle Smith is not going to save you. It's what they do. I've talked to people in Take Back Alberta, and extremely stubborn. They won't listen to reason. They're convinced that they're going to be able to control Danielle Smith and the UCP. See, the problem is as we saw when Danielle Smith was running for the leadership of UCP, she made a lot of promises to a lot of freedom people in the province of Alberta, that she would come out with amnesty for everybody charged under the Health Act, and she would expunge all those tickets and get rid of them. Well, she's backed away from that, hasn't she? Of course she has. Of course she's backed off on it. She got elected by promoting the Sovereignty Act, of one of which she's backing off of. Because that's what they do. Once they're elected, all bets are off. They don't need the people anymore once they're elected. But this time it's a little interesting because Danielle Smith has an election she has to win in the spring. So that adds another little level to this. So it's going to be interesting to see. I'm not sure if it's because that election is coming up and she's being dragged to the left in some of her decisions. I think that's probably what it is once you get in. It's different being in a leadership race than it is being in a general election. And myself and Michelle talked about this earlier today, that Alberta's a weird beast. It's got a really strong and healthy rural population, but unfortunately for Albertans, there's Alberta and Edmonton and Calgary, and that's the predominant population or demographic. Is those two cities make up the lion's share of the population of that province. And so we had the discussion that it's different in Saskatchewan, where in Saskatchewan we're still over 50% rural to urban. And it's not going to be urbanites that pull us out of this mess by any stretch of the imagination. It's going to be rural folks that have those values of self-reliance, self-determination, independence, and community. And they understand that those values are under attack, and their way of life is under attack, and they get it. And so it's tough if you're an Albertan and you want to change things. You got to go through Edmonton and Calgary to do it. Whereas in Saskatchewan, you don't. We only have Saskatoon and Regina. much smaller populations, obviously. And then you have the rest of the province, where it's made up of a lot of rural folks that don't want to lose their way of life. And so that's why I've said for a long time, Saskatchewan has this opportunity to really lead the country, to stop this globalist agenda and come together and unite for something different than what the establishment is offering. And, we'll see. Anyways, Stoney says it's a calling. Well, it is. Everyone calm down and wait your turn. It is a calling. It's 100% what they're doing. Anyways, I've rambled on long enough, almost 2 hours. So I'm going to cut her off for tonight. But thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing this out. We had a good group of folks in here tonight. And once this is uploaded, please share it. Please get it out there. Yeah, there you go. There's Alberta. 81% urban, 19% rural. Ooh. Yeah, you're welcome. My pleasure. All right. Good luck in the coming wars, as my good friend Sean Taylor likes to say. Is Sean still here or is he gone? I think he's gone. All right. Anyways, folks, appreciate it. We'll chat again next time, probably Friday night. Unless our little production on the SDGs is ready for release tomorrow, then I'll maybe do a live stream and release the first couple. All right. Anyways, that's a wrap. Thanks, guys. Remember, globalism bad, nationalism good. Ciao for now.